Okay. All right, let's take a moment to pray and then we get started. Anyone with the mic? Would like to, Mahima has the mic. Please.
Thank you, Heavenly Father. Thank you for this wonderful day that you've given us, oh Father God. As we are going to learn your word, oh Father God, give us wisdom, knowledge, oh Father God. So whatever we learn, oh Father God, we can understand properly, way, oh Father God. You help us, oh Father God. Thank you, Holy Spirit, to lead us and guide us, oh God. I surrender whole class into your hands. Thank you, hearing and answering my prayer in Jesus' name. Say, Amen.
Okay. All right, let's get started. Online, students, you can hear me on, okay, right? Online? Okay, fine. All right. So today we move into our next lesson in church and ministry administration, lesson number 3, where we're going to talk about church trust and governance. So this is basically, in India, we call it forming a trust, a legal entity. So in India, it's called trust. In other parts of the world, they may call it by a different name. In the US, they call it a religious and charitable trust or 501c3 organization. So that kind of gives it a tax exempt status in the US. But here in India, we call it a trust, a religious trust. So there are different kinds of organizations you can form. And of course, there is the organizations that we form for business and all of that. But in the space that we are working in, you can form a religious trust, which is typically if you're a church or if you're doing any religious work, any Christian work, it is important to form it as a religious trust. Or you can form it as a society or like a NGO, a non-profit. But in India, if you form it as a society or as an NGO, technically you're not allowed to do religious work. So the problem that has happened in our country is in times past, and I'm talking about India, in times past, what has happened is people got away with it. So many people formed an NGO. Oh, I'm running an orphanage. I'm running whatever, some social work I'm doing. And along with it, they also did Christian work. In times past, people they just got away with it. Nobody raised an issue on it. So they would run an orphanage, and they would maybe have Bible reading, singing classes, all ministry, all of that together. It was okay. But since the last maybe recent 10 years or so, or maybe the last 15 years, things have changed. Government now has become very strict. If you say you're a society or you say you're an NGO, you have to function as NGO. You're not allowed to do any religious work. And then they put the same thing on the religious work. Before, churches, Christian organizations used to do a lot of social work. So even we at APC, we were working with the mission hospitals. We were doing, social action, like, maybe help the slums, all of that. Now, things have changed. You're not allowed to do, you're a religious organization, you're not allowed to do religious social work. So we had to stop everything. Because their argument is you're using social work to get people into the church, like for conversion. That's why you're giving food. That's why you're working in the slums. That's why you're doing this. So they may become very strict. They have things. So we need to be mindful of that. So if you are going to set up a Christian organization, a church or a ministry, you will most likely, you will have to, at least in India, you'll have to register it as a religious trust. Very clear, right? If you want to do social work, purely social work, okay, then you register as a NGO. Now, in India, NGOs have tax benefit. So, if you're registered as a religious trust or an NGO, you have a tax benefit in that you don't pay tax on your income. Okay, as long as you apply for it. So there is a status called 12A, right? 12A talks about a tax status for the organization. So the organization, first you form the organization, then you apply for a 12A status. That means you don't pay tax on the money that comes into your organization. You're with me so far? Yeah? Let me just check. I'm hearing some sounds coming from online. So I wonder if anybody is asking questions or, okay, we'll take up questions. Renita, you have your hand up. Is there a question or? Do you have a question? No, maybe not. All right, let's continue. So in India, it's called 12A. That means you don't pay tax on your income, but you have to maintain that 12A status. It has to be renewed every 5 years. Okay. In the US, for example, it's called 501c3 status. So if you form a religious organization, you have to get this 501c3. You have to apply, you'll get it. If you get it, then it's fine, right? So in India, you have a tax exempt. Then there's another one called ATG. That's another application. In India, religious organizations cannot get that status. The ATG means you're giving a tax benefit to your donors. That means the people who are giving money, they don't have to pay tax on the money they give you. You're understanding, right? So one is, as an organization, you don't pay tax on money that comes to you. That is 12A status. If you also get ATG status, then there's a tax benefit to your donors. That means if people give you money, they don't pay tax on the money they give you. That is deducted from their income, right? So that is only available for NGOs. It is not available for religious organizations in India. So in India, our people who give money to the church, they don't get any benefit, tax benefit. They have to pay tax on it. You understand, right? So a lot of organizations, so people say, okay, I want to get ATG status, but I also want to do religious Christian work. It's very dangerous now. We shouldn't play with the government rules. And a lot of organizations have gotten into trouble because they want 12A status, they want ATG status, and they want to do religious work. But you're not allowed to do that. In India, things are becoming very strict. Okay? So be clear in your mind what kind of an organization you want. You want a Christian religious organization? Stay with that. Form a religious organization, get your 12A status, stay with that. Don't try to do this where I form a NGO, I get a 12A and ATG, and I want to do religious work. It is very likely you'll get into trouble. Understood? Okay. So that brings us to we want to first of all say that, look, the Bible teaches us, Romans 13, 1-7. The Bible teaches us that we have to be submitted to civic authorities, right? So some Christians would say, hey, I'm doing God's work. Why I should submit to man? Why should I pay tax? Why should I follow the rules? Hey, Bible tells us, follow the rules. Right? Recently, there was one big, and I don't want to talk about it and stuff. Anyway, our Christian people get into all kinds of trouble because they break the rules. right? And after breaking the rules, you get into trouble. We shouldn't call it persecution. I'm being persecuted. You're not being persecuted. You broke the rules, so the government is holding you responsible. What to do, right? So it is better from the beginning, follow government rules. So now, last week, in our state, they came out with the rule. You cannot gather in public places. So till now, we were happily going around, doing, we can stand on the roads. We used to do happily go on the roadside, sit there, sing carols or sing Christian songs. But now they've come out with a rule. You cannot do that on the roads. They're saying it's government space. You cannot do that unless you have permission. And they won't give permission if they already said, if it's a religious thing, they won't give permission. So what to do now? No, we have to follow the rules. You can't say, no, Jesus said, go preach the gospel to every creature. I will come and stand on the road and sing. Then the police will come in. So, yes, Jesus said, go preach the gospel, but obey the rules. And with that, you proclaim the gospel. You follow the rules. Otherwise, unnecessary. So they can also follow whatever the rules are. Let's go to 2 Corinthians. I want us to read this, please. 2 Corinthians chapter 6. Verses 3 and 4. 2 Corinthians 6. Let's read that. Verses 3 and 4.
Will give no offense in anything, that our ministry may not be blamed. But in all things we commend ourselves as ministers of God, in much patience, in tribulations, in needs, in distresses.
So notice Paul, the apostle, what he's saying. We give no offense in anything, that our ministry may not be blamed. Just say, try to be careful. We don't want to offend anybody or offend the government, so that we want to have a ministry that is without blame. Nobody can point a finger. That's how we want to conduct ourselves in the ministry. And so I want to encourage all of us, do your best. Even when you do your best, people will find fault, but don't give reason for fault, right? Don't give a reason. So that you conduct yourself in a blameless way. And he says, in all things, verse 4, in all things we commend ourselves as ministers of God. In everything. The way we conduct ourselves, people should see us and say, yeah, that's how a minister of God should carry themselves or conduct themselves, basically. Right? So Paul himself is saying, look, we hold ourselves to this standard. Don't give people a chance to point a finger. Right? Now we are focusing especially on how the church and the ministry is organized and administered. Be very careful. Right? I remember this was back in the late 80s, early 90s. There's a wonderful man of God in the US. Wonderful ministry. He had graduated from Oral Roberts University, beautiful ministry. And God had raised him up at a national level, especially the ministry of prayer. Okay, so he had a thriving church, church with lots of people, growing very fast. At that time, one of the fastest growing churches in the US. And he would conduct prayer, going to different cities. Stadiums were packed. So they would rent the stadium. And people will come for prayer. Pack the stadium. Now, of course, if you have a worship concert, we know people come for nice worship and music. But you're coming for prayer. So it was a real move of God happening throughout the US. Prayer. He written some good books on prayer. One of his books, could you not tarry with me? Could you not tarry 1 hour? So that became like a bestseller globally. People were reading the book on prayer. And so God was using him powerfully. But in his local church, in the church, and of course, it's not only him, right? He had a big team, ministry, lots of everything going on. But one incident, a TV station came and they just recorded what was, so lots of people were writing in those days letters, not emails. So people were sending their offering, check and all by mail. Or they would write letters, check by mail, send it. So people in the church, the staff, they were getting all these, so huge volume of mail, letters. So they were handling it. And maybe they were not handling it correctly. So they would tear the envelope, take the check, but not even read the letter. Throw it. Sometimes even the check also might go. So this TV station, they came, they recorded all this. Say, this is what is actually happening when you send your letter to this organization, this ministry. This is how they're handling your letters. And it went on national TV. It became a big issue. People are looking, hey, when we send a letter to this ministry, see what is happening. Your letters are being not even read, they're all being dumped in the trash can. Sometimes even check is being... Now, it was not this preacher's fault. It was a godly man, anointed by God. He's not sitting and opening the letters. Correct. It is people in the organization who are handling all this. He's a godly man. God has anointed him. God has raised him. God is using him powerfully. But when this news went on national television, it really shook the ministry. Because both the Christians and the world were laughing at this. What is going on? We're sending letters to the thing, hoping that people will open it. Somebody will pray for the request. At least read the letter first. Pray for the request. And yes, graciously, they're putting an offering and sending. But it is how it is being handled. Nobody's even reading the letter. Almost overnight. First of all, he was so affected, he went into depression. It really shook his ministry. Like I'm saying, he was a good man. Right? He was just serving God, but something went wrong in the administration. The whole ministry collapsed overnight, almost overnight, collapsed. So something somebody found that they could blame, put it on TV. Those days, it was a big thing. It really affected the whole ministry. You're understanding, right? So now we understand what Paul is saying, We don't want to give any offense in anything, so that our ministry should not be blamed. In all things, we want to approve ourselves as ministers of God. So you have to be careful, And it is true that as a leader, he was not directly responsible, meaning he was not the one opening the envelopes, but it was under him. So to that extent, he should have emphasized, hey guys, this is what we are going to do. When a letter comes, you must open it, you must read it, you must pray. If there's a request, you have to pray, and maybe even send a reply saying we have received, send a thank you, something, that whole thing has to have been put in place. Instead, it went out of hand, and it became a very sad thing. Yeah. So how we conduct ourselves, we must be careful, and especially in finances. Let's go to 2 Corinthians 8 and verse 21, please. 2 Corinthians 8 and 21. Somebody could read that?
For we aim at what is honorable, not only in the Lord's sight, but also in the sight of men.
Hmm. So here Paul is actually talking about how they were handling money, right? They're saying, okay, I'm sending Timothy, he's going to come, they're going to collect offering. And he was collecting an offering to send it to Jerusalem. The people in Jerusalem needed help. Paul was just facilitating this whole collection and sending it to people in Jerusalem. But even handling that, he says in verse 21, we want to do it honorable, in a way that's honorable, not only in the sight of the Lord, but also in the sight of man. You see that, right? So I want to be right in God's sight, but also in man's sight. How I am handling this money. He's doing a good thing. Take an offering and send it to people in need. He's doing a good thing. But how you're doing the good thing, you should do it in a way that is right before God and man. Because man is going to come and check, hey, what is going on? You know. So we shouldn't excuse ourselves saying, hey, I'm doing it right in the eyes of God. I'm sending money to the church who's in need. Of course, that's a very good thing to do. But do it in a way that's right before God and man. Right? So that's the objective, right, in having good governance, administration, and ministry. Acts 23:1, we'll just read one more verse, then get into the practical things here. Acts 23, verse 1, Paul says,
And looking intently at the council, Paul said, Brothers, I have lived my life before God in all good conscience up to this day.
yeah. So this is again Paul, his own, how he's conducting his ministry. So I want to live with a good conscience. So ultimately, you should ask yourself, what is my conscience? Does my conscience allow me to do this? You know, I remember, and you may have heard this, I don't know, but 2008, I think, we had tremendous persecution in Orissa, in Kandhamal, in that Kandhamal area in Orissa, 2008, I think it was. Very bad persecution. People were being attacked. And then things spread. We also later on, we had a lot of persecution in Karnataka. Here. Churches were being attacked, especially in Bangalore city itself. We had a couple of incidents, which is very rare, that inner city you'll have church attacked, but outside of the city, like in the rural areas, especially Bangalore side, all that, almost every other day there were incidents of churches being attacked, pastors being beaten, all these things, churches burnt. So it was a very bad time. So at that time, pastors here in our city, we got together. And I think in that meeting, there must have been at least 30 pastors, leaders of all the big churches, all of that. Independent churches, not the mainline churches. They were kind of okay. The churches that were independent were the ones who were being attacked because they're kind of alone, whereas you're part of a big organization like a CSI and all, they were leaving them alone. But so our 30 of us got together. We had this meeting. What do we do? How do we, first of all, help these churches get back on their feet? Help if the churches are burnt, how do we put things back together? All that. So we had all these meetings and all. So we were trying to help, and a lot of plans were done. Anyway, part of the whole process, we formed an organization, we collected money, all of that. So there was some work done. And then there was, again, later on, we had a meeting. I'm fast forwarding a lot of things. But later on, when things calmed down, all of that, we had another meeting. And that time, we had collected some money to do some work with this to help churches outside of Bangalore. But So from APC, in that particular contribution, we had given 1 lakh rupees, not much, but there was the initial amounts. Okay, we'll give 1 lakh to the common pool so that we'll do something. But that particular project didn't actually happen. It was not executed. Then when we had another meeting, we said, okay, let's return the money to the churches who gave. Okay. And after all that meeting, the following week, I get a call from the person who's handling all this. He calls me. He says, Pastor, we have decided that we should return the money. We received 1 lakh. Do you want the check in your name or do you want the check in the name of the church? So imagine, you're getting a call saying, Pastor, we want to return 1 lakh. That's 100,000 rupees. Do you want the check in your name or you want the check in the name of the? So he is speaking to me. Nobody else is listening. Only God is listening. I got so angry. So what kind of a question this is? And I kind of, on the phone, like, try to scold him a bit. Like, hey, what kind of a question are you asking? I said, where did the money come from? He said, from All People's Church. I said, then who should the money go to? All People's Church. Huh? I said, why are you asking me this question? Right? Okay, pass. Okay, fine. But then I was thinking, hey, I gave him this answer, but I don't know what, I'm not trying to be self-righteous or nothing, but what else is happening there? Like if he calls other people and they say, yeah, put it in my name. That could happen. He should not be asking this question from anybody. Okay? It came from the church, it should go back to the church. That is it. So here's the thing. Your own conscience must keep you accountable. Right? Because it is easy. No, yeah, put it in my name. You put it in, it go to your account. Only he will know and God will know. Nobody else will know. But will your conscience allow you to do it? No. Paul said, I have lived with a good conscience. Don't violate your own conscience. Your conscience, it should be a good conscience, clean conscience. Cannot allow you to do these kinds of things. So even if nobody else knows who, I don't care. I'm not living for other. My own conscience has to be clean before God. You're understanding, right? So these are some levels of accountability. There's the accountability to the government. There's accountability to not only God, but man. And there's accountability to your own conscience. Right? Sometimes we can cheat the government. Sometimes you can cheat other people. But you cannot cheat God and your own conscience. Because that God is always watching and your own conscience is there. It knows what you have done, what you've not done, right? So those are some principles, that we have to live by for proper church governance. Now, let's get into what we want to talk about. So what we want to talk about is, when you start a church or a ministry, it is a spiritual work, but because we're operating in on the earth, part of all these government rules and all that, it is important that you form a legal entity, register your organization. Okay, that is forming a legal entity. Initially, there's an incubation period. That means when you start, maybe it's just you, maybe one other person, you're starting the ministry. So there's a time where you just wait for things to grow, right? You may not be able to do it immediately. So one thing is to form an organization, at least here in India, you need 3 people. And so don't be in a hurry to find these 3 people. You need 3 people who you trust, who are committed to the vision. They should not become a problem later on, right? They should be committed. Otherwise, if there is problem within the 3 people, then the organization itself will not function properly. So don't be in a hurry, right? Unless you have 3 people who are together, one heart, one mind. Wait. Right? And then why must you form this legal entity? One is, first of all, it gives you credibility, that people know that, okay, this is an organization. So, for example, suppose you put sign House of God Church or something, whatever. You give one name. You're starting service. People come. Then they say, okay, Pastor, I want to write a check. What name? Should I write House of God? Then if House of God is not registered, if the church is not registered, it doesn't have a bank account, what are you going to say? You'll say, put it in my name. Then immediately they will feel uncomfortable because they want to give it to the church. But church is not registered. Church doesn't have a bank account. So you're saying put it in personal name. It loses credibility. Hey, his personal account, what is he doing? Where it is going? So it is so much better to say, put it in the name of the church. We will put it in the church account. Right? So in many ways, right? Having a legal entity, having an account in the name of the organization, whatever it is, whatever name, people are giving money, they feel there's credibility to this. Right? I'm not giving it to some person, I'm giving it to the organization because that'll do the ministry. Right? And also, it's very important to have separate bank accounts. Your personal bank account and your ministry bank should be separate. So that is again a very big problem. Nowadays, and many people, pastors, they don't think about this. Everything goes to the personal account. Then they lose track. What was supposed to be used for the church, what was supposed to be used for what is actually your personal, everything mixed. Then lose track. There's no idea, no accountability. Right? So it is better to have separate bank accounts. Thing. And also when you're signing a contract, if you're renting a hall or a venue, that contract, everything is in the name of the church. It's not your personal thing. It's a church that's renting the place. It's a church that's signing the contract. And also, there's a protection from liability. That means if something goes wrong, your personal assets, meaning your personal money or personal things, are not going to be attached to the problem, right? It's the organization that signed the contract. The organization will be held responsible. So at least your personal things are kept separate. Otherwise, if it's all done in your name, everything you have can be taken. Right? Fourthly, when you want to engage professional agencies, you can engage them in the name of the church. Example, accountant. The accountant will come and do the work for the church, and they get paid from the church. Then there are other benefits, like we said, the tax exempt status. Like you can apply for that 12A tax exempt status, then you don't pay tax on the money that comes in. You can have access to certain grants that may be available, so on, right? When to form a legal entity, you let the work that you're doing gain some momentum. You see that you have a core team, and most important, find the right people. Find the right people who are going to be part of this organization, the members, right? The trustees who are going to be there. And of course, you need to have sufficient money to pay for the legal expenses and all that. And you finalize the articles of incorporation, or it's called trust deed and bylaws. And we'll go through that shortly, right? How to select members or trustees or office bearers? They should be people who are aligned to the vision. They're willing to serve, not looking for position, people that you have a good relationship with. I remember a long time ago, one of our people who served with us, he just graduated from Bible College. He worked with us here in Bangalore for 2 years, I think. Then he came and said, Pastor, I want to go back to my own place, and started APC there. Oh, sure. We prayed, blessed him, sent him. So he went back to his own town. This was in Orissa. And he just started work, started ministry, just starting. Then one person came. So he met him. He told him, no, I've just come. I've come from Bangalore, this church, etc. I'm here just to plant a new church, new ministry starting. Then this person came and said, see, you have to form a organization. I will become one of your office bearer, trustees. So he called me, the person that we sent, our young person. That time he's young, now it's 20 years ago. But so he called, he said, Pastor, this person seems to be a nice man. He came, met me. He wants to be one of, and of course he was also in a hurry to form a trust, right? To get things organized. He wants to be part of the trust. And I said, no. You just known him for like about a month. And what is his real motive in wanting to be an office bearer, a trustee? Is he ready to serve? Is he committed to this vision? Is he going to be with you for the long run, right? Or is he just going to come and cause problems? So I told him, I said, see, don't do anything now. Don't form the trust. Definitely don't put him on the trust. You wait and see. See, you get to know him, get to know his heart, get to know if he's really committed to this vision. Tell him no right now. Told him no right now. After 1 month, he's gone. He's not around anymore. It means his real interest was not to serve in the vision or be part of the journey. He just wanted a place to control. And especially if money is coming from here, then hey, who knows what he would have done? I don't know. So that was just a real life example where you have to be careful. Don't just blindly, you're my friend, come form a trust. Because once their name is on that legal document, it is official. They have power in that organization. And it's not easy to get it out. So you have to be careful, right? So select the people who are going to be part of the trust very carefully. In India, you can have family members. In the US, it used to be you can have, but recent laws have changed. They don't encourage family members to be on the same religious organization. So laws have changed. In India, as of now, it's okay. Example, your wife can be on the same trust, right? But those laws might change. We never know. So ideally, people that you really who are aligned to the vision, you do. So when we started APC, when we formed the trust, so what happened was, even I didn't know who all, I know I would be on the trust, Amy would be on the trust, because we come here to start the work. But you need at least 3 or more, right? So I didn't know who else to have. So we just waited. But when we started APC, a friend of mine from school days, so I knew Georgie and at that time he was not married, but I knew Georgie from school days. We used to do ministry together in school. He came, and I know his heart. I knew his heart. Sincere. I was so happy. That means I found a friend whom I know. We've done ministry before. Yes, there was a long gap because we had gone out of town, but now we're connecting again. Now he's married, and his wife also seemed to be a good lady. So 4 of us were the first trustees on APC. That means George was a person I knew. We Really, we just knew each other, and so it was very comfortable. And Georgie was one of our worship leaders from the beginning, along with Amy. They used to lead worship in church. So that's how we form the trust, right? Basically, people that you're aligned with, right? And then, very important, when you're forming a trust, you need to have these articles of incorporation. That means, what is this trust going to be all about? And I've given you a sample of the trust, our trust deed. We have made some amendments to it, maybe one or two amendments to it, but generally that's the early trust deed. We'll go through it. Anyway, let me pause here. We have 10 more minutes. Any questions so far? Okay, there's a question here. ATG status is applicable only for churches. Okay, so Sriraj, there are two things. One is the 12A and ATG. 12A is applicable for churches, religious organizations. ATG is not applicable for churches. So 12A basically is tax exemption for the organization. That means the organization doesn't need to pay tax on the money that comes in. So that's a 12A status. ATG is the organization can give tax benefit to its donors. So that's not available for religious organizations. That ATG status is only available for NGOs, non-religious organizations. So that's ATG status. Yeah, I hope I clarified that. Yeah? Okay. Any questions? I didn't want to jump into the document now, but we'll take questions before. Okay, you all good so far? All right, I'll just make mention of a few thoughts and then we'll get into the document next class. So when you're putting together the articles of incorporation, of course, you can use the sample that I gave you and make it better, modify it. But here's some thoughts to keep in mind. When you're forming a legal entity, you're required to submit what is called as articles of incorporation, or in India, we call it trust deeds. Or some cases, they call it bylaws, the laws of the organization. Some thoughts here, and we'll get into details, but some thoughts. It is important that in the articles of incorporation, write everything that you would possibly do in the future. So example, let's say you are forming a Christian home for children, orphanage, Christian. So you're doing it as a religious organization. Okay. But don't just say, we will run a Christian home, we will have children, we'll give them food, whatever, like that. Anything else that you could possibly do in the future, include it in the document. Why? Because in the future, suppose you want to do something, the reference point is it legally allowed? Is this document which you are written when forming the organization, does it allow you to do it? So you say, I want to start a school, Christian school. Okay, beginning, you only thought about a Christian orphanage, home. That time you're not thinking about school. But maybe 10 years later, you feel you want to start a Christian school. If it's not in this document, legally you're not allowed to do it. Government can come, hold this document in your face and say, shut it down. Why? It's not there. Correct. But if it was in your document, you can actually go and start. Form a Christian school, whatever. I'm just giving an example, right? So in this article of incorporation, it's important. Think big. Like, what could you possibly do 20 years, 30 years? You don't want this document to become a hindrance. So put everything there. Even if you're not going to do it immediately, maybe 10 years from now, maybe 30 years from now, whatever you can imagine, maybe we would start a school. So put it there. This organization is allowed to start a school. This organization is allowed to print books. This organization is allowed to use media. This organization is allowed to, plant churches. Is allowed whatever. Just put it in the document. Otherwise, I'm not saying it cannot be done. Otherwise, what you have to do, you have to go through a process. You have to go and make amendment. When you're making amendment, this person sitting in the office asks, why you're changing now? You can't say because I feel like it. No, there has to be some reason. Unnecessary questions. You have to sit and answer. And sometimes if people want to cause problems, they can simply cause problems. They can refuse to make that amendment, then you're stuck. So it is better when you are writing these, the articles of incorporation or the trust deed, anything that you would possibly be doing as a ministry, put it down. Even if you don't do it, it's perfectly okay. Doesn't matter. Nobody's going to say you have to do it. Just saying, this organization is allowed to do all of these things. Put it down. And in the future, when the opportunity comes, you can do it. The problem is, if it's not in there and you go do it, you could get into problems. Okay, so I'll stop with this thought and then we'll pick it up next week. We'll actually go through the document, give some ideas and stuff. Okay. All right. Any questions before we close? Everyone's okay? Okay. We'll close for today. We'll continue this next week. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.